Hello, grade 7. How are you? I came today back with this grammar lesson. It's going to be the continuity of the previous grammar lesson that I started with. So, part 1 of this grammar lesson covered the simple and the compound sentences. Today, I'm going to be covering the complex and compound complex sentences. A very quick reminder, a simple sentence is made up of one independent clause, whereas a compound sentence is made up of two independent clauses joined by either a coordinating conjunction or a semicolon. Now, starting off with the complex sentence, what is a complex sentence? A complex sentence has one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. So a complex sentence is at least made of one independent clause and one dependent clause. It could be more than one dependent clause. All right. So this example here says, fossils, as you may know, are the remains of plants and animals that lived thousands or millions of years ago. So in this example here, I have two dependent clauses which are underlined. So as you may know is one dependent clause, and the other dependent clause is that lived thousands or millions of years ago. My independent clause is the following: fossils are the remains of plants and animals. So as you can see here, this complex sentence is made of an independent clause, which is not underlined, and two dependent clauses, as you can see, are underlined for you. Each dependent clause starts with words such as after, although, who, which, when, until, where, so that, and since. These clauses can tell where, when, and why something happened, or can give more information about the people and the things involved. Okay, so what they're trying to say here, that every single independent clause needs to start with one of the conjunctions that they've listed here in this paragraph. So as and that are conjunctions that make up a dependent clause. So very quickly, a complex sentence needs to have one independent clause and one dependent clause at least. As you can see, I've crossed out the first exercise for you because it's a bit complicated. We're going to be working on part B. I'm going to show you an example and you get to do the rest of the sentences on your own. In each of these complex sentences, underline only the independent clause. So what we need to do is read the sentence and underline the independent clause. So number 1 says, since Eldon hates airplanes, he'll probably take the train even though it is slow. So where do you think is my independent clause? So the independent clause is the independent clause is this one. He'll probably take the train even though it is slow. It's not this. This is the dependent clause because it starts with since. And so you need to do with the rest of the sentences. I'm going to show you more examples to make sure that you got the idea. In each of these complex sentences, underline each independent clause once and each dependent clause twice. So, number 1 says, until you change those strings, your banjo won't sound very good. Where is my independent clause? My independent clause is very clear. Your banjo won't sound very good. So I need to double underline this clause. As you can see, I double underlined it. Of course, this is my dependent clause because it starts with until, which makes it a dependent clause. It loses its complete thought. And of course, all of these sentences are complex sentences because we already know that complex sentences are made up of at least one independent clause and one dependent clause or even more. Number 2 says, Daryl looked after my dog while I was away. So where is my independent clause? My independent clause comes at the beginning of the sentence. So Daryl looked after my dog. This is my independent clause. And the second part of the sentence, while I was away, is my dependent clause. And that's all you need to do in order to identify a complex sentence. Part B says, identify each sentence below with S for simple, CD for compound, or CX for complex. We need to read the sentence very well. Look up for clauses, look up whether they're dependent and independent, and then decide what type of sentence each is. Scientists can determine the relative age of fossils from the layers of rock in which the fossils are found. So let's try to chop this sentence into parts. Scientists can determine the relative age of fossils from the layers of rock. This is an independent clause. In which the fossils are found is a dependent clause, and I know from before that, and whenever I have a sentence having one independent and one dependent clause, this makes the sentence a complex sentence. So the number one is a complex sentence. Number two, fossils in lower layers are older, those in higher layers are younger. Two independent clauses joined with a semicolon make up a sentence that is a compound sentence. So this is a compound sentence. I'm going to leave you to do the rest of the sentences on your own. If you face any difficulty understanding the complex sentences, please re-listen to the explanation, or I'm here to help with anything that is needed. Now, moving on to compound complex sentences, okay? This is gonna be a bit complicated, but I'll try to make it as easy as possible. When I say compound complex, this means compound means two independent clauses. Complex means dependent clause. This makes up a sentence of at least two independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. So it's very crucial that a compound complex sentence needs to have two independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. Okay, so please, we have to memorize the number of clauses that are found in every single type of a sentence. Let's have a look at this example. The Great Barrier Reef that lies off the coast of Australia is the largest in the world. The reef off the coast of Belize is the largest in the Western Hemisphere. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest in the world is my first independent clause. The second independent clause is here. The reef off the coast of Belize is the largest in the Western Hemisphere is the second independent clause. So now I have two independent clauses, and this is the dependent clause which makes up a compound complex sentence. And that's all what you need to do and know about a compound complex sentence. So let's have a look at this exercise. The first part of this page, exercise A, is not needed. Identify each sentence below with CD for compound, CX for complex, or CD, CX for compound complex. Okay. So there are no simple sentences in this exercise, only compound complex or compound complex sentences. Number one says, stay a little longer if you like. Now, this sentence seems to be really, really short, okay? But this is made of two clauses. Stay a little longer is an independent clause. If you like is a dependent clause. This means that the sentence is a complex sentence, because I know from before that a complex sentence consists of one independent clause and one dependent clause. So this is a CX. And that's what you need to do with the rest of the sentences on that page. On this page, exercise A is also not needed. With exercise B, it's the same as the previous exercise that I showed you. It says identify each sentence below with S for simple, CD for compound, CX for complex, or CD, CX for compound complex sentences. I'm going to show you an example also. Number one says, my aunt has joined an investment club that investigates and buys stocks, and she has made a little profit already. Okay, so if I have a look at this, I know that this whole sentence is the first independent clause. I have a coordinating conjunction here, and this is my second independent clause. So number one consists of two independent clauses, so it's a compound sentence. So I'm gonna write here, it's a compound sentence. And that's all what you need to know about simple, compound, complex, and compound complex sentences. It might be a bit challenging when you have all types of sentences in one exercise, but guys, if you just know the simple, brief definition of each one of them, you won't face any difficulty. Remember that a simple sentence consists of one independent clause, only one. Compound consists of two independent clauses joined with a coordinating conjunction or a semicolon, whereas a complex sentence consists of one independent clause, one dependent clause, while a compound complex sentence consists of two independent clauses and one dependent clause, or even more. But it's very important that a compound complex sentence has two independent clauses.